In the last section, we got our form to appear on the screen, but it's down here at the bottom, and our mockups definitely show it as appearing off to the right-hand side. So in this section, we're going to figure out how we can use semantic UI to easily do some layouts of different components on the screen. Back at the documentation, I'm going to find the section for grid right underneath collections. So here's grid right here. We can use grid to lay out some number of elements on the screen in a predetermined fashion. I'm going to scroll down quite a bit here. I'm going to look for the section labeled as column width right here. So if we look back at our mockup right here, we're essentially showing that we want this campaign details thing over here to more or less take up a pretty good amount of space on the screen and then kind of stashed off to the right-hand side in its own little separate column, we want to show that form. So we essentially want to have some different columns on the screen, some of which are wider or take up more width than the others. So we can make use of this code snippet right here to get a good idea of how to do that. So it looks like we're going to import the grid component. We have to place an instance of grid. We'll then make some different columns inside that, and we can pass this width prop to each of those columns to specify the width. Notice that the width is just a hard-coded number in each of these cases. The width is going to total up to some particular value, in this case 16, and it's going to essentially allocate proportions of the available width to these different components inside of here. As usual, this is a good place where writing out the code is going to make a little bit more sense than me trying to use words to explain it. So let's go back over to our code editor. I'm going to flip on over to our campaign show component, because this is where we want to apply these new kind of layout concerns. From our semantic UI React component, we'll import grid up here at the top. And then I'll go down to my render method, and I'm going to start to work with this grid thing. All right, so here's my render method. So I'm not too concerned about the H3 right here. I definitely want the H3 to be at the top of the page. Underneath that is where I want to start making use of a grid. So I'm going to say grid, and then I'm going to make a grid.column. And I'm going to put my render cards call inside that thing. So I'm going to copy this and paste it into grid.column. And then I'll make another grid.column. And I'll put my contribute form inside of that, like so. If I saved this file right now and checked it out inside the browser, I would expect these two columns to have equal width on the screen. But I don't really want the two to have equal width. I really want this render cards to appear to be slightly wider than the contribute form. So I'm going to pass in a prop of width, and I'm going to set it to 10 to the grid.column, the first one right here for my cards. And then for the second one, I'll pass in a width of 6. So the contribute form right here is going to have about 60% of the width of the render cards section. All right, so let's try saving this and see how we're doing. I'll flip back over. And all right, now I've got, my screen here really kind of like constrained, and so it doesn't look too great right now. But if I close my dev tools, we see something like this that looks way more reasonable. So I don't know about you, but I think this looks pretty good right here. I think that we're definitely off to a good start. We've now got our form much more easily visible on the screen, and over time, if we start to add a little bit more labeling to it, it'll definitely be very well placed. So we can have an entire sidebar over here that explains the contract and kind of how it works and what's going on. Let's now take a break. We're going to come back in the next section and continue working on our form.